Hello, welcome to Pike Creek Farm. My name is Renee, and if this is your first time here, thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to week 2 of the Pantry Challenge. And it was a busy week. It was a cold week. We had our first really big snowstorm. It wasn't even that really big. It was more wind and cold than snow for us here in the thumb of Michigan. But we were kind of snowed in anyway with the drifting and everything. So I'm going to show you what we did for week 2. We had some big, I did more meals that would last several days. We don't mind leftovers. And there were some good meals. And I shared some with my son and his family because they're like 3 weeks or less from having a baby. So, and they have a 2-year-old at home, so they're busy, and if I can help a little bit. And what I'm also been working on is this book here I got, and it has 2 sections. And I'm using the front for recipes. I'm using it with my friendship bread, and I'm sorry. I don't know if I'm getting you in the sunshine. Let me try to rearrange. The sun is starting to come out. It was 1 degree this morning, and the wind chill was like 14 below. It was cold when I went out to see my chickens, but they were fine. They were fine. This is probably better. I just like that window, but it's not good for camera. So in the back of this, So in the front of this, I'm putting recipes. And in the back of this, I'm putting canning. Things that I can, if I make any adjustments. So I did do some canning this weekend, so I need to write this down, the date. I canned some tomato sauce from frozen tomatoes. And I canned some chicken with a new recipe. It's a Indian spiced chicken, and I'm really excited about that. Jim won't like it, but my daughter will love it, and I will like it. So those videos will be upcoming. And I did some fun things with the Amish bread, the friendship bread starter. I did chocolate chip cookies, and it makes a lot, and they are, look at these cookies. They're soft. They have a great texture. This video will be coming out this week. It's one of my favorite things I've made. It's just a really good cookie recipe. And I did alter the original one that I took it from. I cut back on the sugar because, the starter has some sugar in it. So I cut back on the sugar, and I think it's really good. It's not too sweet. I mean, it's a chocolate chip cookie, but it's not overly sweet. So I have this, and then I have this notebook. Boy, this is the notebook. I need to label them on the front, don't I? I need to do that. And this one, and I haven't started doing it yet. Today I'm paying bills. This is gonna be where I'm gonna keep track of my expenses and my budget for the year in the front. So that's what I am working on. And then the front's gonna be that. I'm trying to figure out the back. I had some different ideas for it. My shopping list. Trying to figure out. The front's going to be my budget and expenses. Got to figure out the back. Any ideas, let me know below. But let's get to what we did for the week for our food, just an overview, and I'll have the chocolate chip video coming up this week. You don't want to miss this one. Sunday started off with a roofing crew, including my son, coming to the house, so I put crock pot chili on. I also put some hard-boiled eggs on to cook. Well, eggs on to cook for hard-boiled eggs, if that makes sense. So it was a pretty simple day, and we had leftovers and things to grab. Here I am packing up some chili to go home with my son. I sent him a loaf of bread. I had baked bread during the day. And I sent him with some canned goods and just sent him home. His wife is expecting, and I'm just trying to make things easy on them. So when I bake my bread, it makes 2 loaves, so it was perfect. I also did some canning, and here was the chili left for us. The next morning, I did some cinnamon rolls. I had some Pillsbury ones that needed to be used up, so I did the heavy whipping cream and the topping on them and baked them up, and they turned out really good. You add some extra brown sugar and melted butter and cinnamon on the top of them, and you bake them up, and then you put the icing on after they cool slightly, and this is what they look like. They really puff up and are really soft, and they're very yummy. And there's my Amish friendship bread starter. And for dinner that night, we had leftover chili, and I added some cowboy candy and cheese and sour cream, and we had it for a few nights. But then I did a pantry meal from all my canned goods. I was inspired by Leanne at the Mennonite farmhouse. She had made something pretty much like this, and basically a stew, and with all your canned goods in it. So I did the same thing with what I had, and Jim just loved it. And I used one of our last jars of elk. He got an elk a few years ago in Colorado, and I canned it up, some of it, and it's pretty precious to us. So he was very excited that I was using our canned elk. And so I'm going to make a roux. I'm melting the butter, adding in the flour, and going to cook the flour taste out. And I was trying to rush it along, but here it is starting to get ready. And I'm using a really large cast iron pan because I knew it would be a lot, and it would do us for like possibly 3 nights, because I had done the elk in quarts, which I should have done it in pints, but is when I first started pressure canning, and I didn't realize. And the elk is just so good. So just waiting for that to start to bubble and blend in, and that flour smell to come out, and for it to be that nice toasty smell that you want for a roux before you start adding the liquid. So I am almost there. I went down and I grabbed some carrots I had canned, and some corn and potatoes. In the pantry, I had some Thrive Life broccoli, just a little bit left. So I put that in some water to refresh it. And just going to make a nice roux for the gravy. I have my bulk dry onion soup there. You can see the bag from the Mennonite store. I forgot to buy that on my last visit, so that's on my list for next time I go. I am going to dump in the broth that came out naturally from the venison, and because it was raw packed, and that is the natural juices from the elk, and I'm not going to let that go to waste. So I will blend that in, and I'm also adding, you can't see, but I have mushrooms. There they are. I had a partial jar, so I'm adding the mushroom broth too. I love my home canned mushrooms. If you're a mushroom fan, home canned mushrooms are amazing. So here it is starting to thicken up, and it has a really nice flavor, and I haven't even seasoned it yet. So it's thickening up quite a bit. I'm going to add in any more mushroom broth and the mushrooms. And I brought up another jar of mushrooms too. I'm going to add in a jar of corn, and I'm going to drain the juice off the corn. And I had not canned corn. I usually froze corn, but I really love my home canned corn. It didn't get over processed where it tastes burnt. I've read that it can do that. It's nice and crisp, and for casseroles and for real quick heating up, we really enjoy the corn, and I will be doing that again. Here I am going to add in the meat, and venison is a very lean meat. It has a wonderful flavor. This was sort of, a once-in-a-lifetime type trip for Jim, and on opening day, he scouted the trip himself, the territory, and he found a place to hunt and opening day he got his elk. So that was a very exciting phone call to get from him. So I'm just breaking it up. I still want it to be in chunks. I don't want it to be totally broken up meat. I want it to not be fine shredded meat. So, but there was some pretty big pieces that I am breaking up. So I'm going to let the meat heat up. I'm adding in my softer vegetables at the end, like the potatoes and the carrots, because they're softer when they get processed. They are not mushy. They're just softer. There is a difference. So they just need heating up, basically. Basically, that's all any of the canned, foods need is heating up. They're cooked already, which is what makes them so convenient. So this is starting to bubble, and now go in the carrots. No, it's not carrots, potatoes. So and I'm going to cut up some of the larger potatoes because I don't want it to be, huge chunks like in a regular stew, I guess. This is going to be a little more thicker than that. So I'm going to gently stir them in. And I did rinse my potatoes to get the extra starch off. I drained off the liquid and I rinsed them before I added them into the pan. I added some garlic there, and I'm going to add some other seasoning too. This is a local seasoning I get, kind of like a steak seasoning, and that gives a really good flavor. I added some salt and pepper, obviously. I didn't actually add too much salt, though, because I wanted to see how much salt flavor it has. Stirring in the broccoli, which is now nicely refreshed, and that is the freeze-dried broccoli. And here's my carrots, and I can my carrots in beef broth and dehydrated onions. So I'm including the broth because it's getting pretty thick. So I wanted to add some more liquid. So I might as well add this liquid, which has a lot of flavor. It has the carrot flavor, plus it has the beef and the onion flavor. And I don't have to add any onions this way either because I have the minced onions that are in the carrots. And I did add a spoon of the dry onion soup to my gravy when I was making the roux. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. So I am just letting this all heat up together and the flavors meld. And this is the kind of dish that actually tastes better the next night, I feel. So I'm just tasting it and decided that there's a few more carrots in the bottom there I need to scoop out. I do have my oven on preheating too. So here it is. I'm putting some cheese on it, and I'm going to put it in the oven to finish heating up. And you can see it's nice and saucy and thick, and it was very flavorful, and oh my, it was so good. And Jim ended up sharing some with the neighbors. So here it is on the plate when I went to eat mine, and Jim just loved it, and we had it for 2 nights plus lunches. Later in the week, I decided to make some chicken soup. I didn't have a plan of action. I just was cleaning out the freezer, and I had this half a chicken in there. So I did, the bay leaf, the celery leaves, some garlic, salt, pepper, some poultry seasoning, some Danos, and just let it simmer all day and made a nice broth and let it just cook away and let the flavors come out and make a really nice rich broth. I added some minced onion into it also. And then I decided to make it into a creamy soup with homemade drop noodles. And then my son, it's like his favorite, so he came and picked up some. I added some carrots to it. And that was what we had for dinner that night, and so did his family. And we had it for lunch then for a couple of days too. And it was a very hearty, rich, thick soup. And while that was going on, I was cleaning out the pantry, and all those bits and pieces from the holidays of chocolate chips and butterscotch chips and milk chocolate chips, and we had pretzels, I decided to put in the crock pot on low. So first I'm going to put some dollops of coconut oil because that will help it to harden up. And then I added in pretzels and milk chocolate chips and semi-sweet chips. And I threw in some of the cashews that I got. And Missy had to keep an eye on me, make sure I was doing it right, that I didn't drop anything. And I just put it all in there and mixed it up. And no measurements, just eyeballed it to what I thought. I can always add more. And then I will put the lid on. I also found some white chocolate bark later on, so then I added that to the mixture and then added more cashews and pretzels. And I'm going to take this when it's all melted and put it like in clusters, and then I also made some into bark on a cookie sheet and broke it up. And I never got a picture of the finished product because everyone ate it. This is from my Amish friendship bread. It was an experiment. It is a lemon traveling cake, and it had a rhubarb glaze. And then I made our weekly bread. And then for Friday night, I did a quick meal. This was in the freezer. It was some spring rolls and orange chicken. I had bought like for New Year's Eve and we didn't use it. We had leftovers instead. So I had spent the day making bread and doing some other things. So I did a quick dinner and it was pretty good. I mean, you know, it wasn't like homemade food, but it was convenient and it was nicer than going out, and it was blustery. And so we had Chinese food at home. And I was also canning tomatoes during that time that were frozen, so it made it an easy, easy day. And I was able to get my tomatoes processed. And the next day I finished them up, and I took a little bit of the tomato sauce, and I put some butter and seasonings, and oh my, it was a yummy little soup. Thank you for watching, and I'll keep track of everything this week. Keep an eye out for the video on the cookies, and it's gonna be a canning video for Canuary on Saturday, and there'll be some other stuff coming up too, so stay warm. See you next time at Pike Creek Farm.